This is the YOB ConvoCast. One-on-one conversations with your other brother's authors, community members, supporters, and friends.
What's up, friends, and welcome back to the YOB ConvoCast, conversations with amazing people in the YOB community. You know, this episode is so exciting because we're recording a little behind the scenes knowledge. We're recording this in conjunction with his sexuality episode about demisexuality in the city of Oaks, not Ryan. You know, I need to stop saying not Ryan because we don't need to preface that you're not Ryan. You're Jesse.
Yeah, I'm my own person.
You are your own person.
I am me.
You're not a non-person. You are fully Jesse. Jesse, it's so good to see you.
Yes, hello.
I haven't seen you in, well, it's been a continuous stream of seconds as we've been recording.
That's true, yes. And before that, it had only been a matter of months.
Yeah. So a lot of Jesse lately. And we thought this was such a ripe opportunity to not just talk about your sexuality, but to talk about something in the zeitgeist at this moment in time here in this late summer of 2023. There is a movie, a little film production that's been sweeping the box office.
Yes, it's just a small one.
Small little Greta Gerwig film called Barbie. And it's swept the Yobaverse as well. That's the thing.
I think it swept every verse, honestly.
Well, I think I saw a stat that it was like, I think this is true. Like, fact check me, everyone out there. But it like has made the most money from whatever the production company. Like, it surpassed The Dark Knight or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's like one of the highest grossing films. Warner Brothers.
Yeah, like so. It's like the highest grossing, which I don't know how. I'm not a money person, so I can't account for inflation or whatever the heck all the stats are. But like, needless to say, Barbie, a movie. When I first heard about it, I was like, they're gonna make a movie about a doll. Like, what is that gonna be? And it's been polarizing. We'll talk about some of the polarization.
Really yes.
But by and large, you know, it's ranked pretty high on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's, you know, it's getting a lot of just there's a lot of feedback. People have thoughts on this movie.
Yes.
And so we had thoughts in the YOB community as well. And this is something I'm always looking to explore, like taking advantage of when something's in when we're having a cultural moment, and to like not just breeze over it and like, whoa, no, let's talk about Barbie for 30 minutes. Something I never thought we would ever do.
I know, honestly.
You were telling me at the start that when we start this podcast one day, you'll talk for 30 minutes about Barbie.
Oh, Barbie, of all things.
But you know, now I look back and I'm like, of course we're talking about Barbie for next minute. Are you ready, Jesse? Are you ready to talk about Barbie?
I am ready to talk about everything pink.
Because I heard people talking about this movie on our Discord. I'm going to read some Discord thoughts here in a second. And then I was like, oh, wow. Like, I had no intention of seeing this movie up until I started seeing the feedback on our community page coming in.
Oh, interesting.
And I was like, okay, now I almost feel like it's a duty. Like, to the point that I'm going to write this off on my taxes this year. I'm going to get a movie ticket for Barbie, write it off. And then someone posted the Schitt's Creek gif of like, how do you write it off? And it's like, nobody pays for it. It's just write it off. And so that was fun to have that reference too. I always love those moments though, when I can like write off something in the name of content. Cause it's true. Like I'm investing in that movie ticket right now with you.
Can you write off my movie ticket too?
I should have. Yeah. I should have like wired you some money cause you've seen it multiple times actually.
Twice. Yes.
So you have twice the Barbie knowledge than I do. So I'm excited to hear from you. This is really funny because I took a recent trip to Alaska. I was there for 2 weeks and by and large was off the grid to the point that I wasn't checking our Discord. I wasn't checking emails. I wasn't checking the blog. So there was kind of a 2 week period minus a day here or an hour there that I had no idea what was even going on, not only in YOB, but like in the world. Like I had no idea if the world was still going. I mean, there's some debate about whether the world is still going.
Was the cruise like when Barbie got released?
It wasn't a cruise. I want to
clarify. Sorry, just the trip.
It wasn't.
Otherwise a cruise.
I was on land most of the time. It was. I think so. I think it really, or maybe no. It was like on my way out there. I think I remember it came out maybe that weekend. So yeah, because I took a trip.
So it was like right at the beginning.
Yeah, I took a trip to see the SoCal boys, and then we talked about how Keegan went and saw the movie. And abandoned me and my fellow SoCal boys when we were painting together. He went to see Barbie. Shout out to Keegan. And yeah, so it was that weekend, and then I went to Alaska for 2 weeks. So I come back and I post on our Discord. So guys, what did I miss? Tell me what I missed in the world. And then one of our community members just posts a GIF of everyone saying, "Hi Barbie, hi Barbie, hi Barbie."
Yes.
Which, if you've seen the movie, there's all these different Barbies in Barbie Land, and they all say "Hi Barbie" to each other at the start of the movie as the day is starting and unfolding, and they're all meeting one another again. So it was just that was funny. So yeah, I wanted to read some Discord thoughts, because then that brought about this Barbie discussion, and it went kind of deep at some points.
It did, yes.
I hope everyone's okay. I hope everyone's not in a dark, injured place. I hope we all came out of this unified still as your other brothers. But I wanted to read some comments. One person said, "I passed over Barbie to finally see Mission Impossible. Please don't kick me out." We'll let him stay. We'll let him stay. Someone else said, "I have a scathing review of Barbie." And then someone responded to that by saying, "Send me your review so I can create a point-by-point refutation." And that same person said, "Barbie is a side B movie to those who can accept its message." I love how you phrase that. A side B movie to those who can accept its message. But it's also a Rorschach test, so to each their own. Many men found something compassionate and helpful in it, and even more women found a meaningful and helpful message to repair their relationship with their femininity and even with the men in their lives. As I mentioned, the movie works as a Rorschach test. There are probably 3 or 4 valid readings, which don't necessarily exclude the other readings. And so it was around that juncture that I said in all caps, "Who wants to be on a Barbie podcast?" And one Jesse raised his hand with an emoji 3 times. And that is when I messaged you about, "Hey, I'm going to take you up on that. You want to talk about Barbie?"
Yes.
And so now here we are. What do you think about that phrase? Because I have other Discord thoughts. We're only just getting started with the Discord feedback. But that concept of a side B movie to those who can accept its message, how does that hit you?
I think that concept of it being like a side B movie, I don't know if I would necessarily go that far, but I think it was a really, really good picture of even just talking culturally, like one aspect of the movie is this kind of almost like sometimes forceful nature of like Barbie has to be with Ken. Like Barbie has to fall in love. She has to be in a relationship with Ken, and vice versa. Ken,
I was going to say vice versa, especially at the beginning of the movie. Ken is like,
only
needs Barbie.
Only has meaning and value and worth when Barbie looks upon him. That's not quite how it was phrased, but that's essentially that was like the gist of what they were saying. The narrator was saying towards the beginning of the film. And there's this kind of there's this piece at the end where Barbie is basically like, "No, I just like I see Ken as a friend and I like him, but I don't see him as more than that." And she really just wants to be independent, be on her own. Like there's no true like romantic storyline where she winds up with a partner at the end. It's just she ends up with just like this little family.
Yeah. At the end of the movie, was that sort of like ingrained though in the back of your mind? Like, oh, like Barbie and Ken, they're going to fall. Like, cause I was watching it thinking like this whole movie's been about like independence and not having romance define you from both sides, from Barbie's side and Ken's side. And yet, like in the back of my mind, as storylines are getting resolved and conflicts are easing, I'm like, oh wait, Barbie and Ken are going to fall in love, or something's going to happen where they're like now an item. And even the corporate person, like Will Ferrell's in this movie, represents like the president of Mattel or something. Like he even like suggests, like verbalizes that like you guys are now an item now, right? But then no, they're not. And that's so unusual for a movie or for our culture in general, for a story to end like that.
Yeah. And I think this is kind of, again, going back to my episode on demisexuality and being under the A spectrum, but that was like the whole time I was watching the movie, I was not thinking of that particular ending that I think most people were expecting, which is Barbie and Ken like come together and become a item or something like that. I was watching, I'm like, wow, this is really cool. Like it's more it felt more like a self-discovery type of movie. Again, on both sides of like her realizing she's more than just her beauty or her Barbiness, her standard, like what she was designed to be. Like there's more depth to her than that. And same thing with Ken. Like Ken is more than just his connection to Barbie as an accessory. Like Ken is his own doll, his own person, so to speak. It's hard to kind of like talk about it because it's like the Barbies and Kens are just dolls, but they're being portrayed as like living beings,
living entities.
Yes,
yeah,
and the parallels to the real world. But I thought it was really, really cool, a really cool portrayal of like often our culture pushes us to define ourselves by our partnerships, especially like romantic and sexual partnerships. And I appreciated the fact that they were in the movie were kind of challenging that a little bit and being like, no, like it's not bad if you're in a relationship, but that the relationship isn't who you are. Like you're your own individual person. Y'all are you're more than just your partner, your spouse, your kid, your job. Like you have your own dreams and desires and goals that play into that. So I thought that was really interesting take.
Yeah. And the fact that they made these little jokes, it's kind of an adult movie at certain times. There's some lines where it's like they reference how none of these people, none of these dolls have genitalia. And so there's like no sexual things can happen in Barbie land. And then the amusing part in the beginning of the movie, all the Kens want to beach each other off, or they challenge each other to beach off. Because I guess is the joke like, because there is jokes throughout the movie about it's not lifeguard Ken, it's beach Ken. Like, is that a thing? Like the dolls were called beach Ken instead of lifeguard Ken or something? Yeah. So then they turned that into like a masturbation joke, which I thought was fun.
Yeah. Because I think it was kind of a semi-play on words, because if you say like beat you off, but really fast, beat you off.
Beat you off, yeah, exactly.
Sounds like beach off.
So there were lots of beach Kens challenging each other to
a beach off.
Beaching each other off.
Specifically, yes.
Anyway, there is some pushback from this movie about how like none of the men in the movie did anything admirable. Somebody talked about like, can you name one admirable thing that a man did in this movie? And someone else the topic of like preachiness. Like, is this movie just preaching or propagandizing or whatever negative connotation word you want to use? And so I'll get your thoughts on this, Jesse, about that. But some responses on Discord was from this person. I'm kind of curious on what we mean by preachy. The women in my life found a lot of the themes deeply resonant. It's voicing women's experiences, or is voicing women's experiences, or really any experience for that matter, preachy. Would we feel different if it voiced an experience that we felt more immediately part of? And so that was an aspect of the conversation that I wanted to talk about. So how did you feel about the quote unquote preachiness of this movie, or how the men were portrayed in Barbie?
I mean, I think on both ends, both extremes of the spectrum, like it's easy for people who maybe are coming from more liberal or conservative views for I don't like using those terms because it comes with certain connotations, but anyway, for lack of a better term, like coming from like those two ends of like our political spectrum, it's really easy to look at this movie and take it very seriously and literally. And I don't think that's what Greta Gerwig was intending. Like it's meant to be kind of a parody of what our culture is. So everything's like kind of taken up to 100. You're seeing like these kind of like broader stereotypes being played out in real time, which stereotype is not necessarily reality, but you also like stereotypes are based in reality.
Right.
There's some truth there, that because otherwise like it wouldn't have been such a relatable movie for so many people who went to see it. So I think that there's aspects where it is preachy in a sense, I guess. But again, you have to kind of define that a little bit. I think if it had gone in a more serious tone, I would have taken it as being very preachy. Yeah. But a lot of the movie, even with the more serious moments, like it was always kind of paired with these more like tongue-in-cheek, poking fun at aspects of life and culture moments that that still like didn't diminish the seriousness of some of the themes that were being talked about, but also I think took away from what would have been just a very like preachy, in your face, like men bad, women good type of thing, which is where I think a lot of people kind of went in a lot of extreme directions with.
Yeah. I think it's important. I think it's important to recognize that genre, like you mentioned the word parody, and to recognize like, we are turning up the dial in very noticeable ways to get you to notice that, and to be to be able to like relate to the experience of it. Like there's a part in the movie that was particularly cringy where like all the Kens are playing their guitars for 4 hours with all of their respective Barbies and trying to woo them by the campfires at night or whatever. And it's like, you know, does that actually happen? Does someone play their guitar for 4 hours straight to play, not for 4 hours. Woo their women? Probably not. No. Yeah. But,
I do know someone who does that though, or did that.
That's their shtick, their thing.
Yes.
Okay.
I actually, when I watched the movie the second time with my sister, she pointed that out to me, and we were both laughing over the fact that we know this person who that is their thing, like playing guitar at people to try and he's now married, so I guess it worked. But that was
okay. Maybe it works sometime. But it just like, I don't know. So the same person had a lot of great thoughts on this movie, but he was talking about one of his friends about how she was cringing at that entire scene because she knows what that experience is like. It's not necessarily real, quote unquote, but they point to something real. Most women know that not all men are insecure or sexual harassers, but enough of them are that it's something they have to account for in day-to-day life. And again, this is something, it's the thing I kind of took away from it too. It's like, yes, I'm a minority when it comes to sexuality. Like I don't fit into a majority straight culture, as the vast majority of our YOB community does not. But I'm also white, and that's a majority position. I'm also male. That's a majority position. And so it's really helpful for me. Like I've had to learn over the years, because I used to use my queerness as an excuse to be like, oh yeah, I know what it's like to be oppressed or to be neglected or forgotten or less than, or, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it's been really helpful for me, both from a racial perspective and from a gender perspective, to be able to like see a little bit of a glimpse into what I'm never going to know it firsthand, just like no one's going to know my experience firsthand if they're straight. Yeah. But to be able to just like intentionally put myself into situations, whether it's a movie or certainly with like reading books or certainly talking to women, talking to other people of other races. Like, I think that's just such a vital component of empathy and building connections and bridges. And so that's like my biggest takeaway from this movie, is just like getting a little bit of a glimpse. Like it's only going to be a little bit of a glimpse, but to be able to at least see what it's like to be a woman in 2023, and to be able to empathize a little bit more, hopefully. Yeah.
And I think that was really important for me as well, going into it from a similar perspective of like, that's not fully my experience. And so like on that line, like, I think it's interesting that like a lot of men specifically are, tend to get like really upset about the movie, but the movie wasn't made for men directly. Like, sure, there's some guys that like grew up maybe playing with Barbies here and there, because of like, I don't know, like daycares or having sisters. But like the focal point here is really for girls and women who grew up and Barbie had such a profound impact in some positive ways, but also a lot of negative ways on.
Yeah, they talk about body image in the movie and unrealistic expectations and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like it's really coming from, and I think that's even why like the male characters play more of a background role in the movie. Like there's not a ton of interactions with the guys. Like the Kens aren't very prominent. And part of that is like Ken, even coming from like strictly just the standpoint of Mattel as a company, Ken was made as an accessory. Barbie has always been the main focal point. Ken was never the original idea. And so the Kens play a background role. They're not super prominent. Alan, who is...
Shout out to Alan. Played by Michael Cera.
Yes. Alan was so great. But even Alan, like, as great as his character was, and I really enjoyed his character a lot, but played more of a background role.
For those that don't know, he was kind of like I don't know, his sexuality isn't explored, like, because he doesn't have genitalia, but he's kind of like that quote unquote gay BFF role, I feel like, in this movie to an extent.
I think this is getting into like Barbie history. I did a little bit of like Barbie history.
Here we go.
Research.
You guys came here for the Barbie history.
Here we go. Alan was created as Ken's friend. Okay. And in the Barbie canon, there's another character that they mentioned, Midge.
Yes,
Barbie's
Jesse
friend.
just said Barbie canon. Everybody.
Yes, Barbie canon. It is a real thing. So you've got Midge, who's the pregnant Barbie. Alan is Midge's husband.
Oh, I didn't know that. They didn't say that in the movie. Well, that wasn't part of the movie.
Yeah,
but yeah.
It's very, very like side history. Like, if you know it, like, it's important. And
I did throughout the movie, because at the end, they throughout the whole movie, they reference all these different types of Barbies, and I knew there was all kinds of like inside jokes happening, and I just I don't know the history of Barbie, so I didn't appreciate all of them. So that's funny to hear.
Yeah, it's interesting, just because they also reference a lot of Barbie controversies in very subtle ways that, like, if you know it, it's hilarious. If you don't, like, it doesn't really take anything away if you don't know it. But it makes it that much more amusing if you know a lot of the controversies.
Is there one that comes to mind?
Well, Midge, the pregnant Barbie, was one of the bigger ones.
Okay.
At the end of the movie, they also, like, as the credits are rolling, they're highlighting these different Barbies that have been part of Barbie history. And I noticed all the ones that they were showing were all ones that were part of different controversies that Barbie has been embroiled in. So one of them is like the first Black Barbie came out during the civil rights movement. And so that was extremely controversial because it was all over the spectrum. And so there's a lot of controversy there. There was the talking Barbie. I don't know if they referenced it. They referenced it in the Alamo Draft House that I saw it at, but there's like a talking Barbie that gets referenced. They show like a Barbie with like a little camera that came out, I think it was like in the 2000s, and I know that was big because people were like, "Oh, Barbie's spying on our children," and what, like, they're using the video footage. You
can put a microchip in anything these days.
Yeah. So
prime suspect number one.
Yeah, I think even the old lady Ruth references tax evasion, like in a one-off comment, and that was a part of Barbie history.
Okay,
yes.
Gotcha.
I just really enjoyed the fact that it was highlighting a lot of these female experiences, and I also really loved the mother-daughter dynamic.
That was an unexpected thing, because I knew nothing about. I knew nothing about the plot of this movie going into it. I was like, how are you going to make a movie out of adults? So I knew nothing. And so there's this imaginary realm of Barbie land, but then there's the real world. And then as the movie progresses, there's more of a focus, on the real world relationship between a mom and a daughter. Which triggers this whole storyline about like, one of my favorite quotes from the movie was like, because the whole first part of the movie, it's such a sugar rush. Like everyone's excited and happy and
bright
paradise, pinks everywhere. And then all of a sudden Barbie just says, "Do you guys ever think about dying?" And then the music stops, and I was like, oh, my Enneagram 4 heart just leapt. I was like, yes, I think about it all the time. And
Depression Barbie. I was saying to people, I'm like, this movie really is calling me out in ways that I did not need it to right now.
Yeah, it's like anxiety Barbie, and there's a crossover between what mom in the real world is. She's like drawing pictures of depression Barbie and anxiety Barbie, and now it's having an impact in Barbie land, and so that's how the plot kind of connects and moves forward. But
I love the cellulite Barbie, where she's like getting cellulite on her legs. She's like, "That was you."
It all unfolds from there, but yeah, I don't know. I found it just like super interesting though, because again, everything's ratcheted up, but it's like, yeah, what would the world look like if Ken had to learn a world that is typically run by men? And so there's that interesting, just like look through someone else's eyes when Barbie and Ken come to the real world, and he discovers that like masculine culture is everywhere. Like men are on our money, and Sylvester Stallone is on the screen, and he like just like starts walking around and notices masculinity everywhere and how it's so different here compared to where he's from. And that was a little bit of an eye-opening moment too, just again to see the world through someone else's eyes a little bit.
Yeah, it was a big contrast because they showed on both ends like hyper femininity and hyper masculinity.
Yeah, both were hyper. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, very, very extreme. And I also think like I've heard a lot of people say that like part of their takeaway was like down with the patriarchy, which is also something where it's like you kind of have to define like what you mean by patriarchy, because there's a spectrum of like meanings, both good and bad, that is encompassed in just the word patriarchy. But I think overall, what a lot of people understand it to be is this very negative thing. And I liked how they ended the movie was President Barbie basically finishes and she's like, because I think Will Ferrell's character, the president of Mattel, was basically like, okay, cool, we fixed it. Now everything can go back to the way it was. And President Barbie's like, with all due respect, like, we don't want it to go back the way things were before. Like, something needs to change. And I think what was really cool about that little interaction is it highlights the fact that like there's good and bad in both sides, and things have to change. Like, we've got to find some sort of middle ground. But they left it very open-ended because they don't show like how that plays out in Barbie Land. They don't show when Barbie goes back to the real world. Spoiler alert, Barbie goes back to the real world. Us, y'all. She's somewhere she's out alive. But Barbie goes back to the real world, and they don't show how that plays out. They end it on a joke. They do. Which I thought was hilarious. That was such a good way to end the movie. Of Barbie goes to her first gynecology appointment. Yeah, and that's how they end it.
The last word of the movie is gynecologist or something, I think. Yes. Yeah, it's really cool. The easy thing to do would have been to just like, because at the end of the movie, the Barbies and Kens kind of go to war. There's a big conflict at the end to retake Barbie Land. An easy thing to do would have been to go back to the way it was at the start of the movie, which is now the Barbies are back in control. Again, the Kens are like more background characters. And there is this defined, like, no, we need to all figure out who we are independent of one another and coexist in this place to the best of our knowledge. And so, even to the point that like some of the Kens, they want to be a part of the Supreme Court in Barbie Land. Like, even there was a joke to say like, okay, not on the Supreme Court, but we'll start you at a lower court. Which kind of mimics just the way our real world has been. Like, women weren't on the Supreme Court until fairly recently, just a couple decades ago.
Lower positions of power.
Yeah. And so there is this not a return to the way it was, but a new way forward. And I appreciated the film doing that, because it could have very easily just said the Barbies win and the Kens are back to the way they were, almost like slaves, and it's not, and it moves forward. And so I appreciate that. Some other takeaways, because I took notes. I was telling Jesse I had my phone on the lowest brightness setting in the dark movie theater, taking notes on this movie. So
shame.
I feel like I was in a corner of the theater that I feel like I was turning my phone to where hopefully nobody was distracted by my...
Less shame, but still some shame.
A little bit of shame, maybe. Yeah, someone was looking my direction. But I just took some notes, some lines, some things that I found intriguing. I have to do some more Enneagram 4 resonating moments where Barbie cries for the first time.
Oh, yes.
And after Barbie cries, she says, "I feel achy, but good." And who among us, who listening can resonate with Barbie in that moment? I feel achy, but good. Crying's good, y'all. Go cry today.
It really is.
And one of my favorite moments was when Barbie's in the real world and she's sitting like at a bus stop or something.
I was about to mention that.
Okay,
that was so beautiful.
She looks at an older woman sitting next to her and just stares. They stare at each other for a few moments, and you think like, I was thinking the older woman would be like, "What are you looking at?" Or like, "Stop looking," or like she's gonna say something crass or like, "Get out of here," or something like that. And Barbie just says, "You're so beautiful," and the old woman says, "I know it." Anything beyond what I just said that you want to comment on there?
Yeah, I thought that scene was like so heartwarming to me. Cause I really appreciate the fact that like they're kind of addressing in that moment, like beauty is not defined by the standard that people have often connected with Barbie. But there's beauty in the aging process of getting wrinkles and having cellulite and getting gray hair and having less energy, thereby making you fatter potentially. But there's still beauty there because it's more than just that. It's who you are as a person and what your internal beauty, like external beauty fades, but internal beauty always shines bright.
That's cool. It was a cool moment because even as I'm like rethinking that moment, it's like in Barbie Land, there are no old people. Everyone's young and attractive for the most part. And it's like she sees, it's probably, so I'm just now realizing that's the first time she would have seen someone older than like 25 looking. And so the fact that she comments on her beauty and I was like, oh man, that was such a unexpected, touching moment.
Yes.
Barbie also helped Ken cry at the end because she asked Ken, "Are you crying?" And she said, "It's okay, I cried too," and it's kind of amazing.
Oh my gosh! Yes,
so Barbie really helping Ken out there to grow at the end. How did you feel about Ken's big like musical number at the end? That was pretty fun. It was all the rage on TikTok. The big Ken song, like "I'm Just Ken."
Yes.
I forget. I don't have the lyrics on the tip of my tongue.
I'm just Ken. Anywhere else I'd be a 10.
Jesse, you don't see it, y'all, but Jesse just held out his hands to do 10 fingers.
I did. You have to.
That's part of the song. Yeah.
It's part of
That's part of Ken's journey, though, of like he's got to learn to find himself. And at the end of the movie, he's wearing an I am KENOUGH.
KENOUGH, yes.
Sweatshirt.
Which I know is already the rage.
I was like, it's got to be a thing. Yeah,
people are already buying it. But yeah, I know that was also something where like some people felt it was unnecessary, and it was kind of one of those things where I'm like, okay, this is a little random. I don't know why this is in here, but also I love it. And because I also think it's a really cool moment of like at the beginning of the movie, the Kens, just by nature of them being accessories, are kind of fighting and vying for the attention of the Barbies. And so they kind of have to always be putting themselves in the spotlight ahead of the other Kens so that the Barbies pay attention to them. Yeah. And in that moment, like they start out fighting and they wind up kind of coming together in this big, like, we actually like, we don't need the Barbies. Like we're doing our own thing now.
They swing too far in the opposite direction of broing down and taking that to a toxic place. And so again, the path forward is integration with the Barbies and
mutual respect for one another, all this fun stuff.
It was such an interesting arc for the Kens. But yeah, they just Ken said, "I just don't know who I am without you. There is no just Ken." And so that's part of the journey now for Ken moving forward. Let's all pray for Ken, y'all, that he finds himself and finds his identity, hopefully in Jesus ultimately. Let's pray for Ken's salvation, you know? And we'll go from there. My favorite line from Will Ferrell at the end of the movie when he's like, again, don't question the physics of this movie because him and all of the Mattel corporate executives go to Barbie Land at the end of the movie. I don't know how they get there or how anyone gets there, but he was just like feeling all the feels in a happy place. And he said to all of his fellow businessmen in suits, "Can we just have a company retreat and just tickle each other?"
Oh my gosh. That part, I was like, I don't like this. This is really uncomfortable.
But it's Will Ferrell, so it's funny.
Yes. I also hate being tickled, so I was like,
so that doesn't sound like a fun retreat. So
that would be a horrifying retreat for me.
No tickle parties at the YOB retreat. No. Yeah, okay. We'll keep that in mind. But yeah, no, I mean, those were kind of my big takeaways. I don't think this was a direct quote, but a paraphrase was something to this nature. Being human is uncomfortable, and Barbie is one way that we deal with it. Like, we create this thing that's going to do a lot of good, but it's also going to do a lot of not so good. And I think, isn't that anything in life? Like, I've had to even look at that to bring it back to YOB. Like, I believe with all my heart, YOB has done a lot of good for a lot of people in this world. Has it also not done good? Yes, absolutely. It's a human construct. It's something we created. Yes. I'm a flawed human. Anyone who's had a part in building this thing, like, there's imperfections everywhere and conflicts have run amok, but do I also believe it's done a lot of good? And that was the takeaway for me as just somebody in the YOB, in one of the YOB leadership chairs, just to be able to recognize, like, we create something, we hope that it does a lot of good, recognizing that it might not help certain people, or there's always ways that we can improve it. And that's always the goal, is how do we not go back to the beginning of the movie, but how do we create this ongoing path forward? And that's a big takeaway I got from it. I got so much from this movie that I was not expecting to. And it's a shout out to the YOBers. This is my cue now until the end of time. If the YOBers start like latching onto something in culture and talking about it and creating discussion, like, you will like inevitably prompt a podcast or at least a blog or something to talk about it. Like, this is something I'm going to like be more on the beat on. Not the beach on. I'm going to be more on the beach.
No.
What's the pulse of, like, what are people talking about in culture?
And you can write it off.
I'll write it off every single time. So y'all have more movies for me to talk about. I will go write it off and talk about it on a podcast with somebody. So so that's something that I took away. I'm just like, I'm excited to see just more things that our community dives into, because I'm down to reference it and bring people on. Yes. The thing is, if you're going to talk about it on Discord, you also have to be prepared to then talk about it on the podcast or write a blog or something. Yeah. So Jesse, I'm like forever grateful to you for stepping into this role, as hopefully the 25 people listening right now, or maybe more than 25 people who are listening to a Barbie podcast on the Your Other Brothers podcast network. Thank you guys.
Yes, thank you all.
You made this dream happen.
This dream house happened.
This dream house just happened. Yes. It's been so great. Jesse, I think anything else come to mind? Do you think we covered it pretty well?
Yeah, I think one other thing that I noticed the second time around when I was watching it.
That's right, because you have multiple viewings.
Yes. So the second time I was watching it more for like things that I missed, and also kind of in preparation for this. But they obviously didn't delve a lot into it because it's focusing on the mother and daughter, but they kind of show in some of their interactions like a 2-parent household. So you got America Ferrera, who plays this like secretary at Mattel, her daughter, and they focus mainly on that relationship, which I thought was really sweet. And that's something that I know a lot of like daughters often struggle with their relationships to their mothers for a variety of reasons. And so I thought that was really cool to see played out. But then kind of, again, in the background, because male characters are more in the background, but you have the father role, who I know some people were saying like he was portrayed similarly to the Kens, where he's just kind of like not doing anything super significant. Like he's shown doing Duolingo and absolutely butchering this Spanish class that he's trying to do. But I thought it was really cool that it's obvious that they're America Ferrera, her character, clearly loves him. Like there doesn't seem to be any strife or tension there. And similarly with her daughter, like they don't get into it, but it seems like her daughter truly cares for her father in the little interactions that we get. And I thought that was really, really cool to be able to see like a tiny glimpse of. And I think it would have been interesting to see more of that played out. But that's that would just be me personally wanting to see like an extension of like, oh, what happens now that Barbie's in the real world and
You want
possibly living with this family?
You want the Greta Gerwig cut. You want the full.
Yes, the Greta Gerwig
Zack Snyder
extended,
gets a cut.
Yes, the extended edition.
Or Barbie 2. You know, you wait for Barbie 2 and
Yes,
you see where the story
yes.
goes from there. But no, I like how you referenced that. Like, it was open-ended. And so I love that it's like, okay, now they create this new universe, this new world moving forward after this journey that we've all been on. What a journey it was. You know, also the big takeaway for me was I'm getting excited now for the Chronicles of Narnia movie that Greta Gerwig is going to be
I completely
doing.
forgot about that, and I am also looking forward to it.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. We don't know yet what movie she's going to do. I'm hoping for Magician's Nephew because we've never seen that. I think that would be a good starting point.
I'm hoping she picks up where they left off, because the last movie that got made was not good.
Yeah, it's
one of the few where I fell asleep in the movie.
Ooh,
I'm a
hot
big
take from Jesse.
I'm a big moviegoer. I consider myself to like be a movie connoisseur. Like, I watch movies all the time, and I never fall asleep during a movie. That's one of maybe 3 times I can think of where I did.
Well, hopefully Greta Gerwig doesn't fail you in this. I don't think she will. I think she'll do great.
Usually she does great. I've enjoyed everything she's made.
Yeah, I know. It was a really unique, just popping movie, and so I appreciated it. I loved it a lot. Yes. Jesse, thank you for talking about Barbie with me.
You're
no
so
one else
welcome.
would.
Thanks, Barbie.
Thanks, Barbie. And listeners, let us know if there's something in culture, pop culture, you want us to cover. We'll follow the leads.
And remember, you are KENOUGH.
You are KENOUGH. That's a great way to end it. Until we cast our next convo, you are KENOUGH. See y'all, friends.